Well, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report Town. Well, I'm afraid we have some sad news coming through to our newsrooms just now. This is the breaking news that's coming through that Juja Member of Parliament, Honorable Francis Munywa Waititu, has passed on after a short illness at the MP Shah Hospital at around 7:30. The family is saying it's with deep sorrow that they're announcing the passing on of their father, Honorable Francis Munywa Waititu, Member of Parliament for the constituency of Juja, and may his soul rest in peace. I see there's also a lot of condolences coming through from members of the public, including honorable members like Honorable William Kafogo, who sent out a tweet saying that his sincere condolences to the family of the late friend and also my home member of Parliament, Honorable Munywa Wakape. We was to see him this afternoon and felt a bye coming from him. He says he treasures the fond memories of over 30 years of their friendship. Here at the Royal Media Services, our condolences goes out to the family and friends of Honorable Francis Waititu. All right, we had mentioned earlier on that we'll be speaking about the CBC, and that's the debate we want to have right now. Let me introduce my guests really quick. Starting from studio, Professor Charles Ongondo is here, Director KICD and also the CEO KICD and a member of the CBC Taskforce. He's very well versed with matters CBC. You can ask him all the questions in regard to this. Jonathan Wesaya is an education expert and also a parent with a student in the CBC system. He's joining us online, and also Reverend Diane Mugambi, who is also a parent, will be joining us online as well. I mentioned earlier on, you can send in your questions at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report, and it begins right now. Let's bring up the first question.
There is no exam to be done for transition from primary to junior secondary. On what grounds are we going to use to merit these students and place them from a given primary to junior secondary? Number 2, we have junior secondary and senior secondary. These are two different categories or levels of secondary schools. Now, what is the qualification that is going to be needed for a tutor to handle junior secondary and senior secondary in future? Thank you very much.
Prof, about the concerns.
Thank you very much, Trevor, for having me. And let me start by joining other Kenyans in passing a message of condolence to the family, friends and relatives of the late Mheshimiwa Francis Waititu. Straight to the first question, transition from primary to junior secondary. There will be assessment which will take two forms. There will be continuous assessment, which we call formative evaluation, and then there will be a bit of summative evaluation. So starting from grade 4, we shall have learners assessed continuously by their teachers, and that should earn the learners 20% marks, so to speak. At grade 5, they will have another 20%, and then at grade 6, after which there'll be some form of summative assessment by the Kenya National Examinations Council. So at the end, then we shall have 40% from the summative assessment, and then 60% from the cumulated continuous assessment tests. This will give us a view as to how learners can transit to junior secondary. Remember, all learners will be transiting.
Yeah.
So the issue here is to be able to establish a bit of their strengths, a bit of their challenges, so that the teacher taking over from them at junior secondary will know how to support them.
So there will be no repeating, nothing. All learners will transition.
All learners will transit.
Regardless of your performance.
Regardless of their performance. In the CBC, by the time learners reach all this at this level, we shall be saying either they are exceeding expectations, or they are meeting the expectations, or they are approaching, or maybe some are below. What you will realize is that you cannot have learners who are below expectations on all learning areas. They will certainly demonstrate strength in some areas and maybe a bit of challenges in some areas. But at the end of the day, all learners are expected to transit to junior secondary.
But still on that, where's the standardization? Because if say one school tests differently from another, and there's a cumulative 40% almost in there, isn't there a need for standardization of the tests? Some schools may give assessment tests that are much harder than others.
Very, very good question, Trevor. Standardization starts from what we call the curriculum designs, because definitely all learners at a particular grade will be going through similar curriculum design. They will also be using similar, if not exactly the same, curriculum support materials, some of which we used to call textbooks before. But it is also important to note that in each of these years, the Kenya National Examinations Council will be moderating the assessment that the learners will do. It will be administered by the teachers in schools, just like recently you may have seen with what was called Learner Monitoring Program, or MLP. But the Kenya National Examinations Council teachers will administer, send the results to NEC, that then will moderate these results. And then the idea of the summative evaluation here is a check. Actually, it's a standardization measure. Because if, at the end of the day, as you say, some teachers decide to give very hard exams, from what we give in the summative evaluation, we should be able to take note that there seems to be a very big departure between what these learners were given as their continuous assessment and what is emerging from the summative assessment.
Okay.
So all those will be standardization measures.
All right.
But there will also be massive quality assurance in the process, so that at every stage there's a lot of monitoring of what the teachers are doing, how they are administering this exam. Is it too hard for the level, and so on.
All right. As soon as we get Jonathan Wesaya and Reverend Diane Mugambi, we'll bring them into this conversation. There was another question from that same gentleman in terms of there's tests and how do you ensure that a teacher qualifies for the junior primary and not the senior secondary?
Yes, the second question was on who shall qualify to teach at junior secondary level and who shall qualify to teach at senior secondary school level. Remember, Trevor, these levels are both called secondary. So whoever qualifies to teach at the secondary school level should be able to teach either at junior or senior or both. If you remember some years back when we used to have secondary school and advanced levels, the teachers who qualify to teach secondary would teach all the way from Form 1 to Form 6. So it's more or less a similar arrangement. A teacher who qualifies to teach at secondary school level would be able to teach at junior secondary, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, but can teach all the way up to senior school.
Okay. But Professor, where will this be domiciled? And I just want you to explain this for us. So this is how it's going to work essentially. This is the new education system. It's the 2663. It starts from here, 2 years pre-primary, goes there for 6 years in primary. But my main concern is on these two. So where will the junior secondary school and the senior secondary school be domiciled? Because currently in the secondary level we only have 4. This essentially means that we have to add a solid 2 classes. It's like having from 1 to 6 rather than from 1 to 4. So where will either of them be domiciled?
Thank you very much, Trevor. The first thing I want to correct from your structure there is that we are actually not talking about a 2663 system. We are talking about a competency-based curriculum. What you have on the table is a structure. So one may say what we have been calling 844 really is either an objective-based curriculum. Some people say a content-based. So what we are talking about now is a competency-based. But back to your question.
But is it going to take this structure?
Yes, the structure will be what you have shown.
Okay.
Now, so coming to the question of the structure. The domiciling of junior secondary will be in the secondary school.
Okay.
And so as you say, yes, both the junior secondary and the senior secondary will be in the secondary school. They are secondary school levels. It is important to point out that the domiciling here is conceptual. We are not necessarily just talking about a physical space. So the issue is what learning areas, what subjects will these learners be exposed to? What kind of resources will they expose to, and therefore what kind of teachers will be teaching them? The subjects, the resources, and the teachers will be secondary school level subjects, resources, and teachers, and that's why we are talking about domiciling at the secondary school level.
Okay. So this then essentially means that there will be 2 extra classes, right?
One could say so, yes, because if you look at the fact that currently we have four, one would say that yes, we will have 2 extra classes.
Okay.
But going forward, some schools, especially the private sector, may choose to just say we shall concentrate on junior secondary, and some may just say we shall concentrate on senior secondary.
Okay.
But for the public schools, I think for maximal utilization of resources, including teachers, the proposal shall be that every school should be able to have those levels.
Okay, let me bring in Wesaya on this. He's joining us online. Wesaya, what is your concern in regards to the CBC?
Thank you, Trevor. Sorry for the connectivity issues. Happy to see my teacher, Professor Ongondo, there. He taught me in Moi University. My concern is the transition that is going to happen in 2023, where the children who are in grade 6 today, in class 6 today, and those who are in class 4 shall be joining secondary school at the same time. We are not seeing deliberate investment being made to ensure that that transition shall be smooth, even as we await to see the 2 new classes you are talking about introduced at secondary school level.
Okay. Prof?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Wesaya. It's always very good news to a teacher when a student introduces himself and says, yes, you once taught me. So congratulations on coming this far. A good question, and Trevor, and this is a question you mentioned earlier on that I was in the task force that we have come to call CBC task force.
Yeah.
And this is a question that we deliberated on for a long time. We had a lot of stakeholder submissions on this. We had a lot of benchmarking to do because this is not the first time this is happening in the world. True, children who are in grade 4 and those who are in standard 6 will both transit to secondary school at the same time, with those ones exiting from standard 8 going to Form 1 as we know it today, and those ones who are in standard grade 4 then leaving primary at grade 6 will move to grade 7 at the same time. The task force took a study.
Yeah.
We took a mapping of all the schools of this country. We took a mapping of all the spaces that will be available in 2023, and we've given a very clear implementation matrix. One of the reasons I carried this is a copy of the task force report.
Yeah.
And at the end of the task force report, we have done something that has not featured in many previous reports, an implementation matrix. So we have a very clear implementation matrix of what should take place, if you like, from the day this report was launched on the 9th to the time these children get to grade 7 and Form 1 respectively. Yeah. And so there is a very clear roadmap on how the transition, the infrastructure requirements will be met. And it's important to note, if you look at this report, that the infrastructural requirements will not be necessarily uniform throughout the country. Some areas will possibly already have enough schools to take care of the learners going by the populations we have now. Some counties, or some sub-counties in particular, will maybe require more resources. Okay. We have specified all that in the report. Okay. And so Mr. Wesaya should, alongside other people who have this concern, rest assured that this has been taken care of.
Okay. Let's bring in Reverend Diane Mugambi on this. Reverend Diane, what is your concern in terms of CBC?
Thank you, Trevor, for the opportunity. As a parent, my concern is that the CBC is so demanding. So demanding in the sense that I have to do my work and help the child do her work. For example, I have to balance on what I'm doing and again spare some time to assist the child do the homework. One of the concerns is that not every parent is trained to assist the child do her homework. And so I'm thinking about those parents who are not able to read and write, or those parents who don't live and close to their children, or even those parents who are doing several other things apart from their work. For example, I'm a student, at the same time I'm also struggling and trying to beat deadlines in terms of my assignments, and at the same time I'm supposed to help my daughter. So for me, this is so demanding, and not every parent really commit their time to helping their children. Secondly, I would say that the program is so expensive. One time you are required to buy, for example, portfolios or other items that the child needs, or sometimes even the children are asked to like think or even improvise or even take printouts or newspaper cuttings. And I'm thinking about that child who is not able to have access to newspapers or even the printouts cut. For example, recently, my daughter came and told me they were asked to do the sources of water. So apart from Googling and even printing and checking on the newspaper cutting, I feel it is so demanding for both parent and the child. Apart from, again, I also think that parents were not adequately trained. They were not adequately trained to teach or even to assist their children, bearing in mind that not every parent is a tutor.
Okay. All right, Prof.
Thank you very much, Trevor, and thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Diane. Trevor, one of the things you denied me was to introduce me too as a parent. So you just said I'm director KCD and Taskforce member. I'm also a parent. A little concerned these questions coming from Reverend, because maybe there are some of these issues that you would be able to address.
Yeah.
One, I would not say CBC is newly demanding of the parents. If you call them demands at all, the responsibilities we expect of parents in the CBC are not really largely different from the responsibilities any other education system would require from parents. Because what we are asking for here is, one, that a parent can provide a safe environment for the learner to operate.
Yeah.
And that will include health, good health, emotional stability, and just be there to encourage a child as they leave to go to school and come back. Very basic to all of us. But the other thing that we are really stressing on parents here is the issue of values. All literature, all books say that really learning begins at home. Those years that the child will spend at home before they even go to pre-primary education at year 4, and then they go to primary education at age 6, are extremely critical.
Yeah.
And that's when children are taught basic life skills, including toileting, including dressing up, including how to start talking to people, distinguishing that this is an adult, this is a peer. The parent is the gateway to the bigger community. You can call it the intermediate level. So it's the parent who will be able to guide the child on how do you relate with your brothers and sisters, how do you relate with strangers, how do you relate with the teachers when you go to school. And of course, one of the biggest issues in CBC is community service learning, and we are saying that the parent will be the gateway to community. So it is not as simple or as basic as assisting this child in homework. Actually, CBC is not very homework intensive. But what we are saying is that shall the child be able to relate what they learn at school with what they learn at home? And I'll give you just 3 examples because of time. One, the family tree. We have all talked about family tree elsewhere. A child might just be able to ask, how do I relate with somebody I call an uncle? Is that a cousin of mine? Is that a fellow who is your brother in this way? How do I relate with just give me a little explanation of our bigger family structure. Who is our grandfather, great-grandfather, and how does it translate to the point when we are now saying we are siblings? That's one. A child might just ask you basic questions like, what is the difference between that big star, maybe the moon, and the many, many smaller ones? Trevor, in the villages, children will ask you questions like even as simple as, where does milk come from? You have had some children who say it comes from the supermarket. Yeah. So just watching that process of milking and being able to tell the child that this is what happens, that basic process of planting, that basic process of doing small things in the house like making your environment clean, spreading your bed. You don't really have to be very well educated as a parent to be able to do these. The issue of working parents, if we have brought children onto this world, then we should be able to create some little time for them, regardless of how busy we are. So that, for example, if I'm with you here at 11 p.m., the next day when my child is waking up to go to school, I should be able to be there for the child as she wakes up to go to school. I know the demands of work in today's society, but a parent should also be able to make, and this is where I think we need the support of fellow parents like Reverend Diane here, parents should be able to create some time to support the child.
Yeah.
And if you remember when you went to school, Trevor, I'm sure that you really cherish and value and remember with nostalgia those moments when your parent was able to come to school, sit there with the teacher, and with you there to give you support. Not necessarily to blame you for where you have done wrong, to engage you. Let me mention one more thing. CBC is really strong on special needs education. And we are saying that parents will be the first people to be able to identify the needs of their learners. If for example, a child has a low vision, or a child has a hearing problem, or a child has some physical issue that may not be obvious to the teachers, is the parent who will be the first point of call to be able to let us know. Or children that ordinarily some people might think are at trouble. You know, they may just be hyperactive, or even the hidden talent that the child may not bring out. I have been a teacher most of my life, and I know some children that even for them to come out to tell you, teacher, I can play football, teacher, I can act, teacher, I can read in a paragraph in front of others. They're so quiet until maybe a parent is able to say, this can happen. So this is how we really expect that parents will support their children. Let me come to the issue of the expenses. Every time when something new comes up, there are a few individuals who might want to exaggerate. But when we talk about issues like portfolios, we are not talking about anything to be bought. Every child at school will have some kind of book that they work on. We call it exercise book. It may be a drawing book, a math book, or a language book. Basically, a portfolio just means putting together what this child has been doing all along, so that you are able to account for them and be able to, give some remarks on how they are performing. If you think about, the improvisation, really CBC is strong on the ability of the teachers to use what's around them to learn. I mean, somebody else will learn with bottle tops when somebody else may want to learn with, the market counters that are available in supermarkets, which are bought very highly. That carton box that is wasted, that old newspaper, I mean, these are things children they're not going to buy one. Or any other old piece of writing that is there can be formed and inform a learning resource.
But doesn't it then create further marginalization based on resource availability and the categories that parents are in? Because of course, people have different resource levels.
Yes, I appreciate
further marginalization.
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate the different contexts in which parents operate. But if you think about it, every context has its own resources. I mean, what stops you from counting using stones, where somebody else will use maybe very exotic material? That's a resource. And if you remember, even when we were playing as children, we even improvised at some point. We even improvised football. And we played and had our fulfillment as people who are growing up. So every context, if you think about it, has resources that can be used to learn literally all that children will be expected to learn at the pre-primary level and the primary school level.
Okay. Wesaya?
Yes.
Go ahead. Wesaya, go ahead with your comment or question.
For me, it would be to ask my teacher, what preparation then has the teacher received to engage in that improvisation when the text that the teacher has says, take a photograph helping your mother in the kitchen, print it, and bring it to school so that we put it in the portfolio. What flexibility then does the parent have at that point? Number two, it is on stakeholder engagement. There is so much that people need to know that the prof has in his mind, and the prof maybe having it on his desk. But as a parent, and I am fairly educated on matters education, there are so many gray areas, and I would just urge him to leave his gara office and hit the road running.
Okay. Let me bring in Reverend on this as well. Reverend, your question before I take a quick break, then allow Professor to answer.
Thank you. I really do appreciate the professor when he says that the parent has to spare or create time to be with the child or assist the child. But I'm considering a situation where that the mother, for example, for the working mothers or parents, and are they considering even the single parents in this case, whereby she has to work so that she can put food on the table, at the same time do other things? So for me, I just want to agree with my brother that there are lots of gray area. I want also to say that teachers ask some very specific items. For example, one evening a child comes and says that we've been asked to make a garment from, let's say, old sack or something like that related to that. And here you are, you just from work, and you're supposed to prepare this item for the child or assist the child to take the item to school the following day for assessment. That's why I'm saying it is so demanding. And again, when teachers ask for very specific items, for example, for those who are living in urban, or even those who are struggling even to have extra, let's say, food, and a child comes and says that we've been asked to make let's say, a necklace of beans, and you don't have beans, just came from work, and you've got no time or even no resources to buy. And you see, now what this makes the child, when the child goes without this item to school, one, there is perhaps she will face or he will face the teacher for not taking the item that they have been asked to take back to school.
Okay.
Or even as a parent, you feel guilty that you've not been able to assist your child.
Okay. All right, Rev, I have to take a quick break. I have to take a quick break. When you come back, we're still taking questions from yourself and Wesaya to Professor, and Professor will answer those questions as well. Akechi online is wondering, he's saying that ask the professor, when is the report he has in hard copy being shared to the public in whatever form? And Mwalimu also here is sent in, Mwalimu Wandia Njoya. He's saying that we are back to the A levels with CBC. We'll get those remarks from Prof in just a bit. Keep them coming at Trevor Mbidget, Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We're back in a bit.